There is no denying it. Donkey Kong Country is one of the best platforming games ever made, with some of the best levels in all of gaming. But what about the worst? These are the top 10 worst levels in Donkey Kong Country. Most of Donkey Kong Country's underwater levels offer a breath of fresh air from the rest of the game, with the relaxing atmosphere, the great music, and the slightly different gameplay. However, Clam City is one of the levels that just does not work very well. The level's gimmick of having clams that fire pearls at you gets old really quickly. At this stage, there's really nothing here that you haven't seen before. There's lots of fish, lots of empty space to run around in, and getting to the level is just tedious and boring. Forest Frenzy, the forest world is one of the greatest worlds in the entire game and one of the best ever. But all in all, this is a rather weak level in that stellar lineup. The minecart level in World 2 is one of the iconic levels of the game. The minecart stage, Minecart Madness in comparison, is a complete blasphemy. Everything you enjoyed about Minecart Carnage, Minecart Madness just ruins the entire thing. Remember the very complex, very elaborate track you were meant to you navigated in the first one? This one, you have a couple of inclines, you have the ability to jump from cart to cart, and that's about it. There is absolutely nothing of value in this course. There is nothing notable about it other than the fact it's the lesser of two minecart stages in the game, when the other one is one of the best stages, period. It's so frustrating every time you play the game and having to experience experience this again, because it's shorter than the first one, it's easier than the first one, it's less memorable than the first one, and it just comes near the end of the game. What were they thinking with this? This never ever made any sense to me. I despise this level. There are a handful of these stages in this game where the lights just go off, and it was very conspicuous to me that I considered all three of them for this list, and two of them actually did make it on. And this is the mid one. This is the one that's not the worst of the bunch, but like it's still noticeably not very fun and worth talking about, because it is an example of a gimmick stage that just does not work. All you're doing is going forward, jumping on enemies, and occasionally hitting a switch to turn the lights on. It doesn't feel like you're in danger. It doesn't feel like there's a reason to keep the lights on. It feels like a very lazy, half-assed, just gimmick to pad out the game for just a little bit longer. Again, there are probably worse levels in this game, but playing the game again, this one really I really singled this one out as just being boring and just not all that engaging to play. It really was a weak, very poorly thought out level. Donkey Kong Country's strength as a platformer comes from the ability to run and jump. You usually are in constant motion, and when you are, the game feels great. The game is not, however, designed around the concept of just standing still and letting a platform carry you to where you're supposed to go. And that, I think, is the big failing of Trick Track Trek, is just the very concept goes against what makes the game fun. You are taking away one of the core aspects of the game, which is moving, in favor of standing on a platform. It is incredibly boring. It's tedious. There's nothing interesting about this level. There's nothing memorable about it. It's just a very poor concept that does not pay off in any way, shape, or form. Now, here's one I don't think anyone saw coming. Winkies Walkway is one of the worst levels in the game for one very specific reason. One that I think a lot of people have never really thought about or really given any kind of thought to. It's really, really short. I think this has to be by far the shortest level in any Donkey Kong Country game ever, because I was taken aback by this. As a kid, every time I played the level, I was so excited to get to Minecart Carnage. I never really even thought about it, that this level is incredibly short. How short is it, do you ask? So short that I didn't even have enough time to bitch about how short it was when I was playing footage. I had to replay it. There is nothing interesting about this level. The only notable thing about it is that it's the introduction of the frog Winky, who, by the way, is one of the worst animal partners in the series, with absolutely no special abilities, no real powers. Like all he or she does is jump slightly higher than Diddy and DK. That's it. And and what's more, if you get hit and lose one of your partners in this level, for some bizarre reason, if you're riding on Winky, you cannot destroy the barrel. That's right, because the barrel is on the ground, because of the way Winky works, you're gonna have to get off the frog in order to throw the barrel. And it's just such a weird oversight. One that I think not a lot of people have really noticed or talked about, because again, the level is so short and so easy, it's incredibly unnoteworthy and not even worth mentioning, even for an enthusiast like myself. Oh yes, one last thing. The level is 37 seconds long. Remember how in the last world you fought a boss where it just spat out a bunch of enemies at you and you just kind of had to beat it up? Yeah, let's have an entire level based around that concept. Oh yeah, let's have smaller ones that fire out snakes, beavers, and claptracks. I'm sorry, slippas, not snakes. I'm trying to get the enemy names down. It is just a bizarre decision to have a level like this, like after the gauntlet fight, because like, it feels like we've been there, done that already in a boss stage. I've never actually experienced something like this where I just feel like, okay, we're just going through a cave that we've gone through dozens of times already before, and there's nothing interesting or noteworthy about it except for the fact there's a lot of enemies everywhere. In a game where enemies aren't really that dangerous, these aren't even like the more dangerous, intimidating enemies for the most part. You just have like a bunch of basic bitch enemies just kind of like jumping out of these barrels, and like because of the way the game moves, because of the way your character behaves, like they're not really a threat to you at all. Like look just how often I just coast over them. They're not a threat to me at all. The gimmick just does not work here, and again, it's kind of disappointing that such a late game level just has nothing interesting going for it. But it has to be said, Misty Mine is just not all that interesting of a level. Let's take everything I hated about Trick Track Trek and throw Biden's fuel economy into it. Like, this is the exact same thing as Trick Track Trek, only your fuel mileage is shit. So you have to like grab these giant tanks of barrels to keep yourself going. And it is just as boring, with an added gimmick of having to of the game rusing you. Because of the way the track works, you're never actually going to run out of gas ever, unless you just end up missing a canister. You're not going to die or anything. Like, they're set up in a way where they're very easily obtainable to get. They're not all that difficult. And really, it's just an unnecessary addition to a concept that already wasn't very interesting to begin with. I just find myself just baffled that this level exists. It is unbelievably boring and just has absolutely nothing of value going for it. Guess what, guys? It's Winkys Walkway, but with an even worse animal buddy. So bad, in fact, a lot of people don't even consider Squawks an animal buddy, because he's just following you around with a light. And because of the way he works, he's never, ever going to stop shining the light unless you turn around and kind of screw yourself over, which there's no reason for you to do. This level has a poor gimmick. It's short as hell. It's not all that challenging. There's nothing interesting about it. It is just unbelievably lame how they put this one together. And yes, it is slightly longer than Winkies Walkway at 53 seconds, but that is really not saying much. Anyone who has been watching my channel for any length of time saw this one coming. In fact, I specifically said when I released my retrospective that I would be putting this at #1. And after a lot of thought and a lot of consideration, I decided that I really couldn't do that. As much as I don't like Poison Pond as a level, it really is a preferential thing. It's lengthy. It has a lot of challenge to it. There are objectively good aspects to Poison Pond. However, I just don't like it. Like, obstacles come at you from off the screen. It's too long in some ways. Like, at this point, you just kind of want the game to be over. Like, the best parts of the game are already over. And this is really the only level that I even remotely struggle with in this day and age. And that's really because it's so long and there are so many instances of just things off-screening you to death. It just comes off as very, very slow, very, very tedious, and just not all that interesting to play. Like, most of the underwater levels excel, even Clam City, by being like nice, relaxing experiences that are like a break from the typical platforming level. But this one tries to be legitimately challenging, and as a result of that, it just kind of takes away what made these levels appealing to begin with. I feel very strongly about this level. I really do not enjoy it. I never look forward to playing it, and it's just one of those things that I personally have quite a bit of disdain for. Despite my feelings, however, there is one that is objectively a lot worse. have always hated stop and to go station. As a kid, I found myself intimidated by these giant guys and wish there was a way to skip the level. Guess what? There is. I don't know why the developers decided to do this, but there actually is a shortcut at the beginning of the level where you just go backwards and you just find yourself at the end. And as a kid, every single time I would play this stage, I would do that. Because even when I did play this stage, I did not have a good time. It's just one of the most boring, most poorly designed stages I've ever seen in my life. Full of just like these nonsensical enemies that never appear again, with like this switch gimmick to shut them off, which doesn't even make a lot of sense when you think about it. That aren't even really that dangerous, honestly, considering you can just rush through them and get to the next switch. It is just, I hate it as a kid because it was scary as fuck, and as an adult, I hate it because it's annoying and doesn't really suit the rest of the game at all. It just, like, look here, I didn't even bother hitting this final switch. I just decided to bum rush it because there's really nothing they can do to stop me. Unbelievable. Worst level ever.